It always feels so wonderful to be here in person with all of you. And even for those watching online, when I stand here at the podium, I always feel like you're right here with me. And that's very comforting. So hello to everyone tonight. If you've read my recent notices on the little newsletter update that goes out recently, this is my last service celebration talk that I'll be doing as your senior minister for the Tulsa Center for Spiritual Living. I've been in a push-pull in my heart for a couple of months, and I am following the guidance that is telling me to be closer to home now, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. When I have this guidance, I listen. I've learned to listen. My first speaking with you was in October of 2019 when I filled in for Reverend Sue Ellen. And then I was asked to be in the rotation of speakers December of 2020. And then 6 months later, I received that phone call inviting me to be the senior minister. And of course I said yes, because you guys are amazing. Time seems to be speeding up a bit. And with that, things are changing that I could not have known ahead of time. And so now it is important to be close to home. So it's kind of hard to describe what I feel in my heart, but I will miss being here. And what's really going to be sad, the hardest part is not being connected to you as you continue to thrive and grow, as I know you will. And I know that you'll be in good hands and good guiding hands as you go forward. But I'll be speaking again next month, and then I'll be speaking again in May. And Carol, we talked about possibly teaching foundations. I still love to teach and hope that we can still do that. So I'll be in touch. I just won't be senior minister. So there's much to do at home. So let's just take a breath for a minute, kind of let that go. So I wanted to say that. So let's go into our topic for tonight. As we follow along with the themes that come from home office, reminding you that our year theme is Living Everyday Wonder. The monthly theme for February is The Inner Life. And our theme and topic for tonight is Forgive to Live, forgiveness. I would love to give credit. I always like to give credit, and I've talked about that before, to those that make up these outlines that we use. But they don't give us that information anymore. So I can't specifically say thank you to anyone in particular. So I give my gratitude to the universe, because forgiveness and working with inner life and working with everyday wonder is a fun topic. But forgiveness sometimes cannot be fun. So forgiveness is a choice. It is a decision. It is a personal decision, a decision that we deserve for ourselves, and yet is actually one that is in service to humanity. So how many of us actually can contemplate how big a simple act of forgiveness can be? Actually, it can be simple and yet not simple at all. There's a whole lot of emotions and feelings that can be involved. On a personal level, it's not only good for our mental and emotional health, but it's good for our physical health as well, because when we hold things, that creates disturbance in our being. But it's also good for our spiritual health. Forgiveness is a path that allows us to free ourselves from resentment and regret and to find inner peace. So hence that's healing and growing our inner life. And it's a sacred act that allows us to reconnect with the source. It's the tool given to us to assist us in moving forward on our own path of evolution. Forgiveness is a process of recognizing that we have a greater opportunity for our soul's evolution. It calls to us to see the gifts of our personal growth that is really behind all the hurts and the pain and the disappointment and even betrayal. On a bigger scale, when I say it is service to humanity, when we reach that full level of forgiveness of someone or an event, we're actually adding to the healing energy of all of us and what's around us. And you know why? Because as we say and as we teach, at the very basic level, or maybe I can say at that uppermost level, we're all connected and all one. So what we do for one, we do for all. And what we do for ourselves, we are doing for the all. Neil Donald Walsh says that when we forgive someone that we feel has hurt us, we're not only healing ourselves, we are assisting that person, the transgressor, in actually rising up out of the darkness or that lower energy that caused them or supported them in committing that act. And when we can do that, we allow all of us to rise up higher. We're aiding in the rising of the energy lifting from that event. It speeds up their healing into wholeness and into light, while it also releases us and heals us. And I've spoken about this before. So to forgive is to do incredible work on many, many levels. So, when I say forgiveness like that, I'm not suggesting bypassing the legal system, because when people break the law or do something that's really bad, they may need to be removed from society. I'm really talking about something else on a whole different level, above, really above where we are right here. And that leads into, maybe some people might say that, well, a certain person doesn't deserve forgiveness. But does that come from a mindset of ego or from separation? Some of us are maybe better than others. Some are more deserving than others. Those are questions to ask ourselves. When one reaches the acceptance of oneness, that the concept of duality and separation are not real, then forgiveness of the self becomes a forgiveness of the other. Loving the self is loving the all, and healing ourselves is assisting in healing the all. Our affirmation for tonight, and I want us to say it now because we're going to say it a couple times before we finish the talk. And the affirmation is, I am willing to forgive and I am free. So repeat that with me. I am willing to forgive and I am free. And the word willing is very important in here, because willing allows your whole being to kind of unlock a door that you're just willing to step into that process of looking at something different and willing to go into that possibility of healing. We're always willing probably to heal ourselves, but we can be willing to heal someone else. So, and it allows it to happen at your own pace, and that's also very good. I've heard it said that there are no sins, only experiences. And the original definition of sin from the ancient texts is missing the mark. I sat with this for a little bit yesterday and kind of wondered about expressing it. And I just kind of wondered that if there is maybe one sin, maybe it's that someone or something caused us to feel that and to believe that we're separate from Source or separate from God. Or is it that when we come through the veil of forgetfulness down into this earth dimension, that's when we choose to forget? Maybe that's something we won't know until we're back there. But that's a good question. But what I do know is that every experience we have is another opportunity to remember and come closer to the truth of oneness with everything, with all, with each other. And a big part of our journey is to remember love and oneness. And there's no separation, and that only love is real. And forgiveness is one way to do that. It is a practice that takes us right there. Gary Renard from The Disappearance of the Universe says, and I'll have to paraphrase as best I can, that all negative experiences, responses, and even those dark emotions are caused by the illusion of separation from Source. Forgiveness, oneness, loving ourselves enough to love the world and everything in it brings us home to Source. And how about relationships? Relationships give us lots of practice for forgiveness and to heal our original grief. If we become victims and blame the other person, there'll be no healing. And the old beliefs continue to kind of drive our lives. I always say, I've got stuff in there that's driving the bus for me. I had a dream one time that I was in the back of the bus and I don't know what was driving it up there, but it wasn't going where I wanted to go or where I thought I wanted to go. So I always talk about how my emotions and my history drive the bus until I can get in there and kind of work with the process. Well, how about relationships with our parents and our siblings? Our nucleus family is the one that gives us the most opportunity for learning and growing because we've made real interesting contracts with those people. My mom passed away in 2015. In 2009, she'd been cohabitating with a very nice gentleman in a home in Florida. She was so cute. She was so embarrassed about it. Oh, Frank and I are going to move in together. Is that okay? Like, Mom, at your age, it doesn't matter what you do anymore. But they lived in Florida. Florida has not kind rules for seniors. If two people get married, one of them has to give up their Social Security. So it's just not kind. And they both had very small Social Securities. Individually, just one of them, they couldn't have lived in the house. Together, they could live in the house with their money. So they just kind of said, yes, thank you. Okay. And then they moved in together. So that's okay. In 2009, this gentleman passed away. My brothers and I went to Florida to be with Mom and to assist her because she could no longer live by herself physically or financially. And then we had to decide what was going to happen. Well, it was decided that Mom would come live with me, and how that discussion went is a whole other story. But I brought her from 70 degrees in Florida to 25 degrees in the middle of winter to Salt Lake City. So that in itself wasn't pleasant for her. But the point of the story is, she and I spent the good part of the next 2 years psychologically reverting into childhood and adulthood. And she was the mother that was not a whole lot of fun, and I was the daughter who was not a whole lot of fun, and we went through that process. And it's interesting enough how psychology goes. Sometimes she would be the little girl and I would be the parent. And so it was interesting. I used everything I'd learned in Science of Mind and then some to try to bring healing to the situation and to our relationship, and learning different spiritual forgiveness processes. And I was amazed at the miracles that happened. And things leveled out for us. And I could tell when it finally reached a particular point of healing, because my mother one day just out of the blue said, I don't know what I ever did to deserve such a good daughter like you, who takes care of me. And I know that that was not easy for her to say that. In the process of our work together, she never really admitted or talked about some of the things I needed to talk about or that she had done. But we got to a point where you have to let go of that piece. It didn't matter. But that was a big step for her. And so that really taught me the miracle of that idea of spiritual forgiveness. You can look at someone and say, I forgive you. But where does that really go? But when you go into a process of looking at the agreements that we make with people, and what is not just the lesson, but what's the message, and where am I in this, and why is this happening? Because there are processes that we'll talk about at the end. The miracle of it is pretty darn amazing. When my mother finally passed, I felt that everything had been resolved, and I felt very complete. I also felt a loss that I didn't know existed and never thought I would ever feel for my mom. So it was quite interesting. The healing is real. Now, depending on your personal stuff, you may reach a different level in forgiveness. Sometimes you go into these processes and you reach a level of divine spirit, kind of that space, or you get to that point of oneness. I recognize in the work of forgiveness that I'm really one with that person, and that really helps me as I go through processes and understand people. And there's also that place of love. And depending on where you are in your personal stuff, you may hit those levels differently, but at some point you hit all of them. Right now, there are different ideas about how to handle what's going on in the world. I'll just bring in the current moment here. And there are some who say, you have to be a street person and get out there and really fight for your freedom and fight for this and be the street warrior, and that's kind of what's happening with the truckers in Ottawa, Canada right now. And they have a real purpose for what they're doing. I always believe that everybody has a purpose no matter where they are. The guy who sits in the temple and prays and the guy who's in the street each have a job and a purpose to do. And then there are those who say, we must forgive everything and everyone on the planet right now, no matter what they've done and where they are, because it is that level of forgiveness and oneness and taking us into that divine love that will lead us into the evolution of humanity, because we're here to learn to forgive. We're here to learn to love. Let's just put that out there. So in forgiveness, there are some who will say, of course, that I will never forgive my parent, I will never forgive my sibling or any other person, no matter what the story is. And I get that. We all have events that are very difficult for us at some point in our life. And it's not mine to judge on how that kind of comes for you. But that's why I say, if full healing is your choice, and it is a choice, then forgiveness must be in the plan somewhere. And you'll reach those different layers of healing for what's right for you, and you'll be guided in that. And you may start with one event, because you can forgive an event as well. Or you may start with just one person. And the more you do that, you'll have stuff all of a sudden come up into your thoughts. You'll have memories start to come up, and you can do a simple forgiveness even for old memories and people that come up. And then you start releasing, and things will start to dissipate. You start with this wide space of things in your life and in your memories. And as you begin to connect with each one of these again to do a forgiveness, then the space starts to kind of narrow. The separation begins to narrow, and you come closer and closer to these ideas of forgiveness and healing and releasing the pain. And then all of a sudden you're at that point where everything is one. And that's when you really get that feeling that only love is real in all of it. And so here again is our affirmation. I am willing to forgive, and I am free. I am willing to forgive, and I am free. Another interesting thing with forgiveness, what it does for us is it releases that invisible power that the other person or the event holds over us. When we are angry and we're resentful at someone and you got that kind of angst about it, you're actually giving your power away to them freely. Where your thought goes, energy flows and power grows. Remember that thought plus feeling creates the outcome, and the strength of that feeling is what makes it happen. When we think about we might think that we're the heavyweight in the whole ordeal because we've got this feeling of this power, of this emotion and this anger. And yet, the more power we put into that emotion, the stronger our thought is, and the more we're actually giving ourselves away. And we may not be realizing that or thinking about that. And then we actually begin to entangle ourselves more with that person. We bind ourselves to them. It's like hook, line, and sinker. I grew up fishing. You're really kind of hooked into that person. And eventually you end up creating even more karma with that person, even though you're not physically there with them, because remember, everything is spirit. So the act of forgiveness can free us from the past and the weight of that emotional baggage. Now, here's a suggested exercise for this. At some time when you're home, or you can close your eyes right now, you'll find a space and you'll enter into the silence. And you'll think about the relationships with your children, parents, maybe a spouse, partners, friends, etc. It doesn't matter. And in the moment, think about what you feel. What is the emotion with that person? Remorse, anger, hurt, rage, whatever it is. And you say the words, I forgive you for what has happened. I forgive myself for my part. Please forgive me. I know that only love is real, and now love heals all. And then you let it go. Let go of what has tied you to that person, what has tied you to the past. And you hand that situation over to God. The past only exists as long as we mentally and emotionally hang on to it. And then in this way, we can close those experiences and be done. This is a moment to choose to leave the past behind. And when we can do that, we can heal our wounds with compassion and remember that actually we called those people into our lives for the experience. Not always easy to remember why. Sometimes we go, what was I thinking? But we do on a very spiritual level. From the author of this outline, they say, our reality is a staging of our consciousness, an illusion created by our five senses. We see in our world the reflection of our beliefs. Beliefs transform reality. When we understand that our enemies actually love us on a soul level, our hearts open and we get rid of our victim belief. This is how we understand that people consciously or unconsciously actually set out to assist us to heal, creating situations to give our soul the opportunity to contact the original wound or mistaken belief and heal it. In other words, let me say, we create our reality. That's what we teach. There are no mistakes. For many reasons, and sadly for reasons we just can't always access because they're in that higher consciousness, we make arrangements to participate in actions that might hurt us and show us who we are in the moment. So when we reach a place in consciousness where we're ready to change our beliefs and our lives, then we can allow all kinds of things to open up for us. The universe supports us in our healing and our awakening. We may still have circumstances that hurt us, but we're in a very different place of seeing them for the actions that make a difference. And forgiveness becomes a real thing of understanding. So as I begin to conclude our talk here tonight, our actions have consequences. The law of cause and effect demonstrates, of course, that every action has a corresponding reaction. And it's okay to know that others should be and can be accountable for their actions, but be free of judgment and condemnation. Affirm and trust that the universe is arranging everything in right reason for a right reason, that there's a perfection always residing somewhere in that situation, even if we can't recognize it in the moment. That would be, boy, that would be really a place of consciousness if somebody's doing something to you and you are right there going, oh yeah, that doesn't happen too often. But the perfection is always residing in there. And if we can get to that point, if we can see the perfection contained in the situation, maybe afterwards as we're doing our processing, we can receive that strength of letting go of victimhood and feeling ourselves in a place of healing and an opportunity of growth. It's the wound in me that invokes the healing in you, and it's the wound in you that invokes the healing in me. That quality is present in all of us. It opens our hearts and heals our souls. From Krishnamurti, how can there be external peace in the world if one is not at peace with oneself? We'll never know the answer to that question. We are always trying to bring about change externally. We never seem to realize that unless each one of us changes radically, there will be no peace on earth. Krishnamurti spoke that at the UN in 1984. You know what he's saying? He's saying that we must heal ourselves first. We must find peace in our own hearts. And then there's even, they talk about learning to be at 0 point. That is at that place within that is non-judgment. And if you can spend most of your time there, you are in that place of spirit and love. That is a true healing place. Dhammapada, Buddhist teaching, he has insulted me, he has abused me, he has robbed me. He who lives in these thoughts will never be free of hatred, for hatred never conquers hatred. Hatred is conquered only by love, and this is law. So our affirmation again, I am willing to forgive, and I am free. So there, I want to give you a few sources. So one of the first things I learned about spiritual forgiveness is this lovely little book, Radical Forgiveness by Colin Tippett. And there's a website. You don't have to read the book, but the book is good, easy to read, radicalforgiveness.com. And there's a worksheet that he walks you through because there is, through each step of learning, where you are and why. This is how I learned about the Course in Miracles, Disappearance of the Universe by Gary Renard. It's a story, but he has every point of A Course in Miracles in here. And Gary Renard teaches the Course in Miracles too. It's just a different format than the process Chris teaches, and it's wonderful work. But he has a section in here on miracles of forgiveness. And this is a very enjoyable read. There's actually 3 books in the set, but this one is great. And the Disappearance of the Universe is about calming our ego, because when our ego stops controlling us, the universe will change. So those 2, we have a process called Fear to Faith that we teach in Science of Mind. And in your Science of Mind book, the big one, I realize our time is running low, so I won't go into those 2 that I wanted to talk about. But the Science of Mind book talks wonderfully about forgiveness as well. So thank you very much, and I hope you will give this a try. Bless you.